Robert Reich here, host of the You Heard Me podcast, 24-year veteran of the title industry. Today, I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Chuck Haney. Chuck owns Signature XL, and I'm going to let him explain what Signature XL is and what it does. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one. Chuck Haney, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Rob. Thanks. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. So let's kick this off on the right foot. Introduce yourself to the audience. Who are you? What do you do?
Well, again, my name's Chuck Haney. I founded Signature XL a few years ago. We are a national notary signing agency. We cover the entire country. We have over 70,000 notaries nationwide. Work with a lot of national title concerns, and happy to be here today.
No, thank you for coming. Okay, so I like jumping right into the context, Chuck. How in the heck did you get into the online notary business?
Well, it was kind of a lark. I was in the home improvement business. We were doing a lot of financing. We got into some electronic signatures. I was at lunch one day with a friend of mine who owned a title company here in Phoenix, where I'm located. And I had heard about mobile notaries, so I thought, well, I'll ask him about this. This is kind of like an Uber thing, mobile notaries out there. And he said, yeah, we use quite a few of them. And I said, tell me a little bit more. How much do you use them? And he thought about it for a second. He said, we do 9,000 signings a year. And I said, how many of those you outsource to mobile? He's like, probably a third of them. I'm like, wow, 3,000 signings a year. And then I did a little research. He's one of 200 title companies in Arizona. And I thought, okay, what are those 200 companies doing as far as outside? And then take that times 50 states. So I started doing research on the industry, and I saw there was really no giant dominant players. It was a very fragmented, segmented industry, a lot of independent notaries out there. So I saw an opportunity, started out with a little business plan on the back of a cocktail napkin back in 2018. Rolled it out in 2019, didn't really get a lot of traction that year. Didn't wind up getting his business very much, but went out and started knocking on doors and putting the sales hat on and really learning the industry and developing connections. And then when COVID hit, blessing in disguise, silver lining, is that's when our business actually exploded.
Yeah, no title agent wanted a homeowner coming in their doors during COVID, that's for sure.
Exactly. You had homeowners that didn't want to leave their house, and you had title and escrow people that didn't want anybody visiting their office for fear if they came in and infected one person, it would spread like wildfire and it would shut down their whole office or their whole company. So the use of mobile notaries really escalated, became much more advantageous. Of course, we had notaries that were concerned about it too, but we worked on different ways. And of course, the economy, interest rates dropped sub 3%, and that just exploded with refis. So hold on to your hats. We were flying.
That's phenomenal. And you're in Arizona. What city in Arizona are you?
We are in Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix. Okay, very good. Okay, so there has been, Chuck, a lot of talk over the years about RON. Remote Online Notarization. It was coming, and then it kind of didn't come, and then somebody else was trying to resurrect it. And you would think during COVID that we would have embraced it, but we really didn't. So, from your vantage point, and you're the expert, what is the state of RON in the United States?
Well, pre-COVID, it was out there, but nobody was really embracing it. As you know, the title, escrow, lending industry is a little slow to adapt. We all talk about fintech, but there wasn't a lot of traction. Once COVID hit, everybody wanted RON like right now, but it wasn't ready to go. Even in Arizona, they had enacted laws, but it wasn't going to take effect for another year. So we actually lobbied the governor of Arizona to do an executive act and try to accelerate the adoption of it legally. But really, it wasn't just the state. It was, every secretary of state has to approve it in their state, has to go through the legislature. Then you have to get the title insurance underwriters, the county recorders, the lenders. There's so many different parties the stars have to align. And really what we're seeing is the secondary lender has to be willing to accept the E-note. And that is really one of the biggest stumbling blocks right now. 98% of the signings out there are still mobile notary wet ink. We're seeing a little bit of in-person mobile notary with a laptop or a tablet doing electronic signatures, but it's still very slow to be adapting because of all the constituents that have to embrace it and roll it out and move it forward. So I think it's the wave of the future. When will it be readily accepted? It's still years away, I think. So our model is still get the order, send a mobile notary out, wet ink, paper it, send it back to title.
Of course, it works for cash closings, for cash deals, right? And probably I think you mentioned to me once about international stuff, so works good for both of
Right.
those. Yeah.
Most of the RONs we're doing right now are either a cash buyer, predominantly seller, power of attorney, some single document that needs to be signed. But of course, another case use for it is overseas. We have, take Florida, for example, a lot of property owners in Florida are not U.S. citizens. So we can do a RON. We use a platform that incorporates biometrics. There's a couple of states out there where that's an acceptable means of identifying this identity of a signer to execute a transaction. Title insurance underwriters are typically willing to accept that on the seller side. So instead of the knowledge-based authentication where they have to answer 4 to 5 questions on their credit report or U.S. Social Security number. So with a foreign passport, we have databases with about 200 different countries where we can match that up and then authenticate it with facial recognition biometrics. So that's a good chunk of the RONs that we're doing today.
Very good. Okay, so let's progress through the COVID years. It was the Wild West. Lots of closings, low interest rates, lots of notary closings. What happens? What's been happening lately now that COVID is, fingers crossed, is pretty much done?
Right. Well, when that started, the worries about it subsiding, the economy shifted gears and interest rates we saw spike up to 7%. And that was late 22, early 2023, and well into 2023. Even today, interest rates are still the mid to high 6%. And we're still waiting for the Fed to cut rates. So, but there was a dramatic decrease in home sales, home purchase. Refis fell off the board practically. So volume for everybody. I would think there was about a 40% contraction within the industry I saw as far as layoffs and lenders and title companies. But we survived that. We contracted a bit too. We saw volumes down. We adjust. Most of our model is variable, so less signings, less notaries. But recently, in the last 3 months, I had a vision. I visualized where I wanted to be the first quarter. I believe in visualizations. We actually hit our target in March of where I wanted to be, set a new target in March where I wanted to be in second quarter. And happy to say in June, July, we just blew the doors off of that. So we're seeing a pent up demand that just, I think couldn't hold on any longer. Of course, you talk about rate locks. People own a house with a 2.5% interest rate. They don't want to sell. They're going to make a lot of money, but they know they're going to spend a lot of money and get a new loan at 6.5%. But there's people out there that had to move, job relocations, downsizing, family growth, whatever the necessary reason. We're seeing a lot more business out there, and I think the forecast for the industry is looking good now.
Awesome. Hey, be careful about saying you hit your goals, because the guy that says that is kind of like the guy that gets the hole in one. He's got to buy the drinks back at the club. So
Yeah, that's
be
right.
careful about that.
Well, I visualize that hole in one just like a golfer would. So
That's fantastic. Okay, so thank you for that explanation. You said at the beginning that you've got 70,000 plus notaries in your stable. That's a lot of people, Chuck. How in the heck do you manage 70,000 notaries across how many states are you in right now?
we're in all
All
50
of them?
states. Yeah,
All
30
50.
states
All
too.
right. How do you manage them up in Alaska, down in Florida, Maine, California? How do you do that?
Well, some people call it like herding cats. They're all independent contractors,
Oh,
but
boy. Yeah.
70,000 is the pool of NNA certified notaries. So we use that as a minimum. We obviously check their credentials before using them, but that's, I think, where it separates us from some of the other services out there is we actually phone vet them. Out of that 70,000, we've got 2,000 designated as preferreds. We know they do a fantastic job. We're going to use them every chance we get. If we go into an area where we don't have one of our preferred notaries available, obviously the credential check, all that comes into first play, but we pick up the phone and call them. We're looking for professionalism and demeanor, first off, because that's been impressed upon me over and over. People, executives in the title industry is, hey, Chuck, your notary might be the only person, certainly the last person, maybe the only person that our client, the buyer, borrower, seller, is going to get face to face with. So they're going to make or break our repeat and referral business. So they got to do a good job. They're probably also the lowest paid person in the whole chain as well. But we're going to phone vet them, looking for professional demeanor, how they sound. If they're having a bad day, understand. But if they don't sound good on the phone, they're probably not going to sound good in front of that signer as well. So we interview them. How long you been doing this? How many signings have you done? How many of that particular signing type have you done? So they're going to pass our vetting before we put them out there. We also have a do not use list too, where all of our clients update us on notaries they might have used from other services. hey, this John Doe didn't do a good job. Don't ever use them for our signing. So sad to say our do not use list is greater than our preferred list, but
Right.
tell a client we don't want to have you be a guinea pig. We want to send out somebody that we know is going to do a good job. So it doesn't
Yeah.
always go perfect, but our mantra is excellence. Perfection's unobtainable, but we're shooting for excellence.
Yeah.
So
Very good.
that's our database. So we have coverage all over. We have clients all over the country. So we usually their go-to service, if they've got more than one, and most of the big ones do, is who's going to do the best job for them, who's going to get the order filled, who's going to take care of a problem. That's where we hang our hat.
Very good. And I can see you're passionate about it, which makes complete sense to me. So you vet the notaries, you kind of rank or rate them, or at least put them in buckets as to good, better, best, and don't use. That's interesting. You were telling me that about the insurance that you carry, because there's a lot of fraud going on these days. Very criminal cyber fraud and other kinds of fraud, seller ID fraud, et cetera. You mentioned that. Talk to me about the safeguards you have in place in the insurance.
Well, one of the things when I get into the industry, I saw most notaries might carry 25,000, 50,000 of E&O insurance, errors and omissions. Some of them up at to 100,000. Some of the signing agencies out there might carry 1 million of E&O. And I thought, okay, E&O only protects you for an innocent error. It does not cover all the other types of liability or exposure you might have. Give you an example. Say a notary contractually, us and the notary are obligated to delete any NPI, non-public information, personally identifiable information, PII, all the acronyms out there, from our possession, our hard drives, storage, paper, electronic, whatever it might be. But let's say you've got a notary that just hasn't done that. Maybe they've got the last 100 signings they've done stored on the hard drive on their laptop, and they just happen to stop at Starbucks to take a break. They log into the Starbucks Wi-Fi, and of course, there's nefarious parties out there just lurking on public Wi-Fi. They hack into the notary's laptop. Now they've got 100 people's or more NPI, birth dates, social security numbers, identification numbers, bank account numbers potentially, and that's tremendous exposure. There's a claim. There's a breach. Is E&O going to cover that? Absolutely not. So that's a cyber claim. So we have 2 million of E&O. We also have 2 million of cyber. So if we're hacked, our notary's hacked, if there's a problem in the transaction somewhere, that is the extra protection we offer. We also carry 1 million of crime and fraud, and I've yet to find another signing agency that has that coverage as well. So we just ran into an incident yesterday. I won't go into the details, but we saw something that a notary did that would have potentially, if it had gone through, we caught it, but it would have been a felony. So if that had happened, we had coverage for that as well. It wouldn't have been a V&O, that wouldn't have been cyber, that would have been crime. So we have $1 million coverage for that. So when I talk to title company owners and executives, I talk about risk transference. What happens in that Starbucks example, if that claim, the notary or the signing agency didn't have coverage for it, it would have hit the title company's coverage. So yeah, most of them have cyber insurance. But what happens in these days where there's so much cyber activity, ransomware, cyber attacks, you have a claim, God forbid, on your cyber insurance, your premiums are going to go out of sight, or you're going to get canceled at renewal time. Either way, it's going to take a big hit for you financially. So by us having that insurance, and I'm not welcoming those claims, and we've never had one, but you're transferring risk off of some from your plate to my plate. So it's another protection that we offer that separates us from most of the other signing services out there.
Awesome. I in my mind's eye, the notaries that I've met, and not a bunch of them, I see this kind of school teacher type of personality that is just, very clean looking and acting and would never commit a fraud. But I guess it can happen anywhere, can it?
Yeah, they might not be the one perpetuating the fraud, but they might be the victims of the fraud.
So tell me, Chuck, with all this in place, how do you stand in the title industry? Is there rankings that you're aware of, or does anybody compare you to the competition?
Well, there's no public, rankings of signing agencies out there. I don't know about total volume, but subjectively, certainly there's rankings out there. I can tell you, number one, we're in the quality vendor marketplace, which is a title production software. I don't know how many signing services or notaries are in that place, but they send a survey to every client after every signing. And on tens of thousands of surveys, we have a 4.9 rating out of 5. That is by far the number one rating of all signing services in that vendor marketplace. We've also done more volume in that vendor marketplace than any other notary signing agency. So when a title client searches in the marketplace, we're pulled up by their algorithms for highest rated volume and highest rated surveys too. I can tell you a couple stories about some big national title clients that we got in the door. This was early on, out there knocking on doors, and I got into one huge national title company, and they already had 8 vendors. But this was boom times, and they were looking at making sure they had enough coverage if somebody couldn't handle it all. So we got vetted, went through all their vetting process, got in approved. We were vendor number 9. So we have to work our way up for the totem pole. So they threw you a few breadcrumbs just to check you out and see how you worked. But within 1 year's time, we had actually leapfrogged all of them and got up to the number 1 vendor as far as volume. So they put out a ranking every month as far as where you stand for, SLA, service level agreement, and where you rank as far as defect percentage. So we were up there. We weren't always number 1, but we were in the very top in all those categories. But we became clear-cut number 1 vendor as far as volume. They were telling us how much more they were giving us than the other vendors. And I said, hey, I love it, but tell me, really, how did we get up there beyond these SLAs and quantifiable measurements? They said, good question. They went back and asked their order team, and the answer they came back with is, we like your team the best. And it's like, that's very subjective, but okay, why do they like our team the best? It's because you're the quickest to respond. You always find the notary out there in the boonies in Kansas or Vermont or Alaska. You always find an option for us, and you also respond the quickest. So we know when we give you an order, your team is going to get back to us and take care of us. And we know there's problems. There's always problems in this industry. I mentioned perfection's unobtainable, but your team gets back to us and tells us, hey, we're on it. We don't have an answer for you yet. We want you to know that we're working on it and we're going to have a solution for you here quickly. That was the biggest pain point when I was talking to clients and prospective clients, is the notaries don't get back to us, the signing services don't get back to us, and we've got funding deadlines, wire transfers, closing deadlines. Realtors want to get paid. Clients want the keys to the house. We got a whole chain of events here that if that notary doesn't do their job, everybody's going to look bad. But you guys take care of business and you fix it. My statements to my team is always, we want to be a hero to our client. How can we be a hero? How can we fix the problem? How can we go above and beyond? How can we take care of them? We want to be known as the ones that fix the problems the quickest.
Yeah, we've all heard stories about the moving trucks are in the driveway. We got to get this deal done.
Exactly.
So we talked before we came on about as you're saying, the importance of communication, and you're saying not just communication, but clear, quick response communication. But with 70,000 notaries, and it occurs to me that you're in Phoenix, Arizona. That means the East Coast gets up 3 hours before you guys. Mm-hmm. And the West Coast, quits working 3 hours after the East Coast. So you got, I guess you would call those even 15-hour days. So how do you handle all that?
Well, you're exactly right. Even though we're in Phoenix, we got to cover the entire country. And we do have a ton of clients back on the East Coast. So I have employees in Texas. I have employees in Arizona. That's our internal team, not our notary database. But we start work at 7 a.m. Eastern time. So that's an early day, even in Texas. So we're on it. We're automatically responding to title. They start work before 8. They want answers from the signings the day before. They want scan backs. They want to know the status of the closing. So we are full motion early in the day. And then you take into consideration the West Coast, California, where there's a ton of business transacted. We have an AM team and we have a PM team. So I have a vice president of client services that manages 2 associate directors of client services. One runs the AM team, one runs the PM team. So we're working sometimes till 10 o'clock Pacific time, taking care of business, making sure responses are done, requesting documents for the next day's signings from title. So it's sitting there in their inbox. They know we got to get those docs so we can satisfy their signing needs. We work on weekends. The world doesn't stop on Saturday and Sunday. There's still signings out there. Some of our bigger clients have placed orders on Saturday and Sunday. We also have signers out there that don't recognize certain holidays. based on their beliefs. So we've done signings on Christmas, we've done signings on Easter. So this is a 365 day a year business. So we have people taking care of our clients and our clients' needs.
I know you love what you do, but I got to ask you, did you know it was going to be all this when you first got into it?
Absolutely
Probably
not. Absolutely not. But I looked at how can we be different? How can we be different than the other guy? Because when I talk to a client or a prospect in the beginning, they're like, oh, yeah, I got a notary service. You guys are all the same. Well, that's not true. We're not all the same, but you've got to be able to articulate how it is. And basically, I just asked for a chance. Let me get my foot in the door. Give us a try. In this world, you shouldn't have just one vendor anyway. If something happens, God forbid, another cyber attack, we saw that with some of the big Fortune 500 companies last year, Thanksgiving, Christmas, beginning of the year, their business paused for a week. Well, if that's your signing service that's owned by one of those guys, what are you doing for closings? So you should have a tried and true backup vendor, tested, vetted, ready to go in case there has to be some business continuity. Every business continuity plan, disaster plan should include backup vendors. In fact, that's typically the weakest link in the chain is your vendor. That could be where the breach comes from.
Yeah.
So make sure they have their systems tested, have all the vetting and certifications done, and get us in the door and try us out and let us prove ourselves.
Well, just like the in the automobile industry, that very large software SaaS company had their cyber attack, and it shut down. It shut down a lot of dealerships, many dealerships all over the country. So I get what you're saying.
Right.
So I'm curious. You've got to have some stories, Chuck. I'm going to pull them out of you. You've got to have some really good stories about closings at odd hours and odd places and under odd circumstances. And just to get you started, and I'll let you run with this because there's some really good ones here. Let's start with the snowstorm in Colorado.
You remember that one, huh?
Oh, I do.
That
Yep.
was a few years ago. It was a client we were just getting started with, and they called me up and they said, we need you to pull off a miracle today. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe today's a miracle day. I don't know. It's Christmas Eve, so maybe we're lining up for it, getting ready. But they said we have a young couple that we had a notary lined up to go see them down in rural southern Colorado. There's a massive snowstorm there. There's snow piled up. The notary we had scheduled backed out. The couple has to close today. They have to sign their paperwork today so they can take possession. We can close and fund the deal. Otherwise, their finance rate lock is going to expire. Top it off, it's a young couple, first time home buyers. They're nervous as all get out. They're actually due with their first child in about a month. So everybody's stressed out in the situation. So my team, we got on the phones. We actually located a notary within an hour, talked to them about the snowstorm. They said, no problem. I've got a four-wheel drive. I'm only about 15 minutes from that location. They went out there, got it done. We were actually saved the day for the young couple and the title company. And the owner of the title company did call me back later in the day, Christmas Eve, and said, you pulled off a miracle, Chuck. You've got all our business going forward. So I always
That's
preach
the
to
way
my
to make
team,
it.
let's figure out how to be a hero because
Yeah.
that cements the relationship with our clients because they know we're their go-to and we're going to get it done.
Exactly. That's the way to make a good impression on a title agent. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about the California story that you told me the other day.
Had another title company that they were giving us all the attorney states. They had another notary company doing notary signings, and they said, "We'll let you, get your foot in the door, but we're going to use you for the attorney states." And as I said, we cover all 50 states in our database. We have attorneys too. So I get a call from the VP. It's 5 o'clock Pacific time, and he said, "Chuck, I need a miracle." He used the same word. He says, "I had a signing scheduled for tonight in Connecticut, an attorney state. We had an attorney lined up. The signing was supposed to be happening now, which is now 8 p.m. Eastern time, and it's not going to happen. The attorney bailed on me, and I need an attorney." So I said, I don't know if I can get a hold of attorneys at 8 o'clock at night, but we'll give it a try. We only had 8 attorneys in our database in Connecticut. We called all 8. We got a hold of the fifth one on the list. And they said, yeah, I'll do it. I don't have plans tonight. He wanted a little bit more money to go do it, but we actually got it done that night, 9 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And again, Ryan said, hey, you're my hero. You're going to get not only my attorney business, but you're going to get our notary business now too.
Awesome. I love that saying. Find a way to be a hero to your clients. That I think every company could adopt that slogan, and it would do them well to to do just that.
This is a fintech industry. Everybody talks about technology, but our side of the
Yeah.
business is still a people business. It's
Where's
still
the
a
personal side?
face-to-face
Right.
notary and signer and making that transaction happen, whether it's a celebration, new homeowner, or whether it's a tough situation, a divorce, or elderly couple or a widower selling off a house they lived in 50 years. We need that notary to be sensitive to that situation.
Yeah, and I guess when you look at the numbers, when you have 70,000 notaries to choose from, and you do the smart thing, you vet them all, but you can't vouch for 70,000 people because you're going to get all kinds of personalities, and some people have a good day and a bad day on any given day, and lots of variables there. So your system to vet and then to sort of rank within your system the better notaries and the ones that you don't want to do business with is got to be key.
Yeah, I tell all our clients, they say other companies have a bunch of notaries too. And I said, well, that could be very well that we're all fishing from the same pond. But how do you vet them and how do you manage them is what separates the good signing agencies from the not so good.
And again, just to emphasize on that point, you and your team interview these people. You get on the phone, you talk to them, and each and every one of them before they're allowed to go out and do a signing on behalf of Signature XL, correct?
We interview them before we ever use them. If we have assignment in an area where we haven't used a notary before, we're going to interview and vet them. Now, we've had some clients that have had particular, hey, Chuck, we're seeing, a problem with this particular document. Sometimes the notary misses this. Can you make sure your notaries are aware of this and pay particular attention to that? We're going to make a phone call to the notary we assign on that particular assignment, no matter whether it's preferred, approved, brand new one. We're going to not only vet them, but we're also going to point out what they need to do on this assignment to make sure that we're handling the special needs of that client.
Very good.
We're dealing with hundreds of clients, title companies, and they're dealing with so many different lenders. Our notaries see different docs every day. There's no consistency on the docs with that many lenders and that many title companies.
Oh, yeah. Gosh almighty. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's just kind of summarize then what makes you stand out. I think it's important because you're telling a very good story, a very unique story. And again, I can see that you're passionate about it. So you told me, and maybe briefly touch on these four things for us as well. Service, it's a people business. We just talked about that. Your technologies and your risk transference. So can you kind of just summarize all four of those in a statement or a paragraph?
Yeah, I would say the one thing we didn't touch on when the technology is we have integrations that we can actually connect directly with through third party into Qualia, Resware, SoftPro, RamQuest, a lot of the major title production software. This creates ease of use for the escrow officer. They don't have to jump to a separate portal. It creates tighter security because the docs are moving through a secure connection from the title company's production software straight to our order management platform. So it's not only the higher insurance out there and the coverages that we offer, but also the higher level of technology and integrations that we have out there as well. I've heard horror stories where escrow officers are emailing documents to notaries. So none of that happens with us. There's no emails of documents. It's all through secure portals. The service, I think I can't emphasize that enough. I could tell you multiple stories about multiple clients, how we got our foot in the door and through service, we elevated up to number one. Another one where we moved from 8 to 1 in about a year's time as well. So it's service, service, service. It's being available. It's taking care of business. If I have to eat one and send a different notary out there, that's exactly what we're going to do because we're going to take care of the client no matter what. So it's the notaries, it's the coverage, it's nationwide, being able to cover the entire country. It's the service level. It's the insurance coverages. It's the risk protection. It's the technology for efficiency, but not replacing that face-to-face. It's the one-stop shop. So we can execute a transaction, whether it's a mobile notary, in-person, wet ink, papered out, or it's a hybrid transaction with electronic signature, IPEN they call it, in-person electronic notarization. It could be all electronic signatures. It could be a mixture of wet ink or electronic signatures, or for those that are eligible for a RON transaction. We're not just a SaaS platform where they're going to refer you to somebody else if it can't be done via RON. We're going to take your signing, we're going to execute it whichever way you want it or whichever way it can happen.
Let's give a shameless plug to one of your technology vendors who does such a good job with who handles your integration.
Well, Notary Loop, Signing Loop, they are the ones that built the integrations between our order management platform and the title production software. So they do a great job for us. It's a very secure connection. They're in the process of getting their SOC 2. Our order management platform is hosted at Amazon Web Services with multiple backup of backups. They have a SOC 2. You're dealing with the biggest technology, one of the biggest technology cloud storage companies in the world. So our technology, we've passed vetting from Fortune 500 companies. So Notary Loop is certainly a key component of that.
Awesome. Very good. Okay, let's bring this home, Chuck, and give us from your vantage point what the future of title, maybe title and remote closings. Ron, you can feather in Ron there if you want. What do you think the next 24 months looks like?
I think our volume is going to increase overall because the market is getting strong. I mentioned that pent up demand. I think we are going to see some lower rates. I'm not the industry expert to talk about finance rates and where they're going exactly and exactly when. But I think once we see sub 6, maybe down into the fives, I don't know that we're ever going to get to 2 and 3% again. But if we get in the fives, there's going to be a flurry of activity from refis of people that bought at 7 or high sixes. I think mobile notary, wet ink, in person, whether they come into the escrow office or they send a mobile notary out there, the foreseeable future is going to be papered out transactions. I think there's going to be a greater adoption of e-signature, but still mobile notary in person, where you're going to use a tablet or a laptop for an electronic signature. I think there's going to be a greater scrutiny and embrace of technology to authenticate the signer. We're seeing a lot of land fraud with fraudulent sellers of properties they don't own. So we're going to see a greater through technology identification of the signer done by the notary in person. That's available through Ron also, but for the mobile notary in person, we're embracing some greater technology to thoroughly authenticate the ID of the signer. And then I think you're going to see grow of Ron, but that's going to really be dependent on the lenders in the secondary market for the e-notes and the adoption of that. So right now, I think it's about 5% of the market, if that. We might in the next 2 years see it grow to 10%, 15%, but we're still going to see predominantly that notary with the papered out transaction.
Between you and me, I think Ron's going to take an act of Congress.
Pretty much does. The SAFE Act is out there, but it's been pending for a
Yeah,
long
no, I
time.
mean, right. I
So, but
mean,
it's
no
I
doubt.
think it's more than just the legal adoption of Ron in all states. I think the biggest thing is other industry experts might differ with me, but I think it's that secondary lender is potentially the stumbling block for the purchase transaction, the lender transaction.
Yeah, agreed. Chuck Haney, owner, founder, president of Signature XL. Thank you for coming on. You heard me. You're a wealth of knowledge. You're the first ever notary that I've ever interviewed, and I really enjoyed this. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, Rob. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for your time.